Welcome back to KC Talks EV, and yes, I'm finally in the BYD Seal. First of all, I just want to give a massive thank you to BYD UK for lending me this vehicle for testing purposes. And by the way, I've left a link in the description if you would like to find out more. And if you have decided to purchase a BYD Seal, please make sure to let them know that KC Talks EV brought you there. So in this video, we are going to be talking about specification. We're going to be talking about the real positives of this vehicle as well, a couple rooms for improvement, and who I believe this vehicle is for. So without further ado, let's get started. In terms of specification, this is the top spec excellence trim, so therefore it's got the all-wheel drive system as well. But all models in the UK have an 82.5 kilowatt hour lithium iron phosphate battery pack. Now, I just thought I'd mention for longevity reasons, approximately 3,500 cycles to 80% health is expected from lithium iron phosphate battery packs, and that would equate to approximately 1.1 million miles. I have no idea why we still talk about battery health nowadays, especially if it's lithium iron phosphate. We're definitely looking at the battery lasting longer than the car in most cases. WLTP range is 323 miles from the Excellence all-wheel drive trim and 354 miles from the Design rear-wheel drive only trim. And on my range test at least, as well as the 700 miles or so I have covered in this vehicle already, it is pretty on the money in my opinion. I think with a lighter right foot as well, you'll probably exceed WLTP slightly. And in fact, on the range test video, I will also mention a couple things about the cruise control, which in my honest opinion, I think if you didn't use the cruise control, you'll probably get significantly higher range as well. In terms of AC charging, we are looking at 11 kilowatt three phase and 7 kilowatt single phase. It would be really good to see 22 kilowatt three phase charging in a lot more vehicles because a lot of commercial places do have that. In terms of DC rapid charging, we are looking at 150 kilowatt. And in fact, if you watched that recent YouTube short that I posted, I actually got higher than 150 kilowatts. I think I got 152.2 kilowatt max speed. And although this is slower compared to things like the EV6, which I think tops out at around 230 kilowatts, it is still okay. And a 200-mile top-up would take, roughly speaking, about 26 minutes. In terms of rear boot space, we're looking at a pretty impressive 400 litres of space, and it is a very usable square size as well. The other thing is this vehicle is equipped with a frunk. It is approximately 53 litres, so absolutely great for things like the charging cable. And although this vehicle is a saloon, and I would have preferred a fastback, I can kind of understand that given the fact that the Tesla Model 3 is also a saloon car. It would be good though to have a few more fastbacks because it does increase the practicality quite a bit, in my opinion. As I mentioned, this vehicle is the top spec excellence trim. Now, the oddest thing I think about the specification list is that the key difference in the interior between the Design and the excellence trim is the head-up display. I have absolutely no idea why I can't have the head-up display with the Design. It would be lovely to have that because I think it's a bit of a must in my honest opinion. And also have the ability to have rear-wheel drive and the additional range. So BYD, if you are watching this, if you put the head-up display on the Design trim, I definitely would highly recommend that one. In terms of braked towing capacity, the Design trim is 750 kilos and the Excellence trim is 1,500 kilos. It's really, really good to see that actually it is now comparable to things like the Tesla Model 3 with 1,000 kilograms of braked towing capacity, but it's not as good as the BMW i4's 1,600 kilos, but it is really, really positive to see that more and more vehicles do have the ability to tow, and especially with a vehicle with as long of a range of this as this one, as well as something that's very, very well planted on the road. I think it's excellent to see that you can tow things like a fairly large caravan with it, or alternatively a trailer to the recycling centre. Finally, in terms of pricing, the Design trim is £46,000 roughly, and the Excellence trim is approximately £3,000 more than that. In terms of competitiveness with things like the Tesla Model 3, the base Model 3 is still under the £40,000 price bracket, which I'll explain later is actually very important. And things like the BMW i4 are significantly more expensive than this if you compare, for example, range and performance. So I think you have to go for the top spec model in order to get anywhere near the performance as well as similar range. And it's around, I think, £20,000 more or just over that. So I think this is a pretty well priced vehicle. In terms of the positives and the driving characteristics, handling is exceptionally good in my honest opinion. It is very, very well planted, very compliant, and in fact, actually, on country lanes is actually quite a bit of fun. I think, especially when accelerating out of corners, the four-wheel drive system definitely manages the power and very, very little understeer as well. I must admit, though, that the changing of the driving modes, especially if this vehicle is supposed to have adaptive dampers, doesn't make that much of a difference, but the ride is exceptionally comfortable. The other thing as well is that these are the most comfortable seats I think I've ever actually sat in a vehicle. I think the BYD Atto 3 was very, very similar as well in that case. And again, this vehicle is exceptionally smooth to drive, especially on the motorway. I think looking at the driving range, you're looking at what, 5 or 6 hours of continuous driving in this vehicle. I definitely would need the toilet way before then, but absolutely this will definitely munch up the miles. The other thing I should mention is that the interior quality is definitely a step up as well. When you compare it to things even like the Tesla Model Y facelift and the Model 3 Highland, but the fact is this is definitely such a huge step up. All the materials are pretty soft touch, especially on the dashboard area, and it's just a very, very nice place to be. I definitely think this is a huge step up in comparison to things like the Tesla Model 3. So I've now sung its praises. What are there for rooms for improvement on the BYD Seal? First of all, the localization. I had this same problem with the Atto 3 as well as the Dolphin, but it's pretty clear that BYD don't spend any money on the localization. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were using some form of Google Translate. Lane Keep Assist is not labeled as Lane Keep Assist, given the fact that most other manufacturers do call it that. It's not labeled that, it's labeled something completely different, as well as efficiency. Normally in this country, we either use miles per kilowatt hour or alternatively watt hours per kilometre on the European continent. For some reason, it thinks that I want kilowatt hours per 100 miles, not very useful in my honest opinion, as well as I can only get efficiency statistics for the last 50 miles or alternatively accumulated total for the entire age of the car. Both of those things are not particularly that useful, BYD, and in fact actually the accumulated total makes absolutely no sense at all to have. If you, for example, purchase a used vehicle, who really cares about what the previous owner was able to do? And the fact that you can't reset it is also very, very annoying. So BYD, if you're watching this, please in some way in a software update, update that to miles per kilowatt hour or watt hours per kilometre. I'll be happy either way. The other thing is, and this, although is not really a room for improvement in some way, it is over the £40,000 VED threshold. What that means, therefore, is I believe you'll be paying an additional £3,000 of VED over the 5-year period that you own the vehicle from new. The Tesla Model 3 base model, which is just below, I think it's £39,990, especially if you get the solid colour the instant you put an option on it. For example, the another paint goes up again and you still have to pay the £3,000. It makes it slightly less competitive again, but if BYD launched, for example, a smaller battery pack rear-wheel drive model for less than £40,000, this would pretty much completely go away. And I think that is something to keep in mind if you are planning on purchasing this either outright in cash or on lease. You will have to pay this as part of the VED or car tax or whatever you want to call it. Now, the thing is that would I recommend this vehicle? And I think the answer is an absolute resounding yes. In fact, if you know me personally, you know that I do absolutely love Tesla vehicles. I've always wanted, for example, a Tesla Model S or alternatively a Tesla Model 3. And the fact is, after having this for the last few days and driving it as I normally would, I think that might have completely gone. If I was going to pick a premium sedan, I would absolutely pick this BYD Seal over a Tesla Model 3. As an all-round package, so things like handling and things like road noise, refinement, performance even, it's not the best in terms of efficiency. I probably believe the Tesla Model 3 will probably do slightly better, but it is definitely a reasonable level of efficiency. The only one thing that you will miss if you buy, for example, this over a Tesla Model 3 is the Tesla supercharging network. But as I've really found out over the last, especially the last year or so, the UK infrastructure has come on leaps and bounds, And for me, at least, it's really not that much of a problem, especially with a vehicle with, 300 miles of range. I don't need any more than that. And my home charging or destination charging will most certainly cover me for that anyway. The other thing is that really I'm super worried for a lot of these European manufacturers. This vehicle really is a very, very good, competent all-rounder. And the fact is that if you compare to things, for example, like the BMW i4, it undercuts it by over £20,000. People are going to consider purchasing this over a BMW on pricing when it's that much of a discount for a similar spec level. BYD, you have genuinely built a vehicle that, in my honest opinion, is definitely one of the best vehicles I have tested on this channel. And especially for what it is, I wouldn't exactly call it the best value proposition. I think that goes to some of the smaller vehicles that are coming onto the market in the coming months. Stay tuned if you want to have a look at that. But absolutely, BYD, this vehicle is excellent. And if you are considering buying a BMW i4, I would definitely consider this. If you are considering having a Tesla Model 3, honestly, I think you'll be a lot more impressed with this vehicle. So I think that is pretty much it. And as you can tell, I am very, very impressed with this vehicle. So if you would like to find out a little bit more, make sure that you have a look at the link in the description, as well as I may be getting the base model design for testing. So make sure that you are subscribed and click on that bell icon so that you are informed. Otherwise, be sure to like this video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't. Leave a comment below to let me know your thoughts on the BYD Seal. And I think that is pretty much it. So thank you for watching and talk to you later.